Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of Hammonton Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan Study Public Information Center number 1. My name's Steve Wong. I'm the project manager for Sam Schwartz Consulting. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will be muting everyone in the audience. If you have any questions or comments, please use the chat feature, which is located on the bottom of the screen of the presentation window. If you don't see it, sometimes you got to move your mouse a little bit and then the option will come up. For those of you who are watching on Channel 9 or the town live stream and have a question or comment, you can please send an email to info@townofhammonton.org. We have somebody monitoring that email and they will post your question into the chat. This Public Information Center is being recorded and will be posted to the project page on the town's website. And the presentation slides will be posted on the website as well. At this time, I would like to introduce Denise Mazzio from the Town of Hammonton. Denise?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Mazzio. I'm the Communications Manager and the Recreation Leader for the Town of Hammonton. First, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. The town, along with the New Jersey Department of Transportation's Office of Safety, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Programs, is working with the town to create a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. The main objective of this project is to develop a comprehensive system of bicycle paths throughout our town. The project will help us to identify areas of opportunity for bicycle lanes, pedestrian improvements, streetscaping, and so much more. I encourage you to participate in this study and help us to attain our goals and make Hammonton a bicycle-friendly and transit-oriented place. I'd like to now introduce Mr. Bill Revere from NJDOT to talk about the grant that we received.
Thanks, Denise. Hi, I'm Bill Revere, Principal Planner at NJDOT in the Bureau of Safety, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Programs, and I'm the Project Manager for the LTA program. The purpose of the program is to offer technical assistance to a community in order to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety and access. NJDOT acts as the facilitator, and we've assigned Sam Schwartz Consulting, an expert in bicycle and pedestrian planning, to perform the work. The LTA program is almost 20 years old, and there have been over 80 plans prepared. The most important thing to remember tonight is that while Sam Schwartz is an expert in bike and ped planning, you guys, the experts on Hammonton, we'll be relying on your input to make this study as valuable as possible, and we'll be discussing ways for you to give that input shortly. Now back to the Sam Schwartz team and Andrew Lappett. Andrew?
Hi, good evening, folks. I'm Andrew Lappett, and I'm part of the Sam Schwartz team. Thank you, Bill. And welcome to this Public Information Center for the Town of Hammonton Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan Project. During this presentation, we'll discuss data collection efforts that we've completed thus far. We'll talk about how you can get involved in this project, and at the conclusion, we'll go over the next steps. So what we've done so far. We've done an extensive data collection effort, which allows us to paint a picture of the existing transportation conditions of Hammonton, with special focus on pedestrian and bicycle transportation. The project team has collected traffic volume data, historical crash data, transit data, mapping data. We've researched previous plans and proposed projects, and we've also completed a field inventory of 8 selected streets for focus, known in this project as the priority corridors. So as I mentioned, a field inventory was conducted for 9 priority corridors. These corridors were identified by the Town of Hammonton and confirmed by the project steering committee. Along each of these corridors, measurements were taken and roadway and sidewalk conditions were noted. The selected priority corridors include the following on the screen: Central Avenue, Bellevue Avenue, which becomes 12th Street south of Egg Harbor Road and is also designated as Route 54, Egg Harbor Road to Moss Mill Road, Fairview Avenue, which becomes 13th Street south of Egg Harbor Road, Chew Road, First Road, Second Road, Main Road, and Park Avenue. So the information collected during the data collection phase in the project was utilized to complete several different analyses. So first, what you're looking at here is a bicycle level of traffic stress analysis, known as LTS, which was conducted. So LTS levels are determined by roadway features such as speed limit, traffic volumes, lane widths, and number of lanes. And as you can see here, there are 4 different levels of stress in these graphics and photos that I'll go over real quick. On roadways with LTS level 1, such as the one in the picture here, which is 2nd Road between 12th Street and 15th Street, this is a road that's suitable for bicyclists of all ages and abilities. They should feel comfortable riding these roads. These roadways are characterized by minimal and low speed traffic. You'll see LTS2 in the top right, which is Central Avenue. We've identified an LTS2 road as Central Avenue between Bellevue Avenue and Peach Street. LTS2 indicates that this road could be comfortably ridden by the general adult population. While traffic volumes are higher here than LTS1, the volumes are still minimal and speeds are still relatively slow. Let's take a look at LTS3 in the bottom left, which is we've identified as 12th Street, also Bellevue Avenue. And this is a street that's considered comfortable for bicyclists who are more confident, as these roadways tend to have both higher speeds and higher traffic volumes than LTS 1 and 2. And finally, LTS 4, as you can see here, which is an example would be Egg Harbor Road between Park Avenue and Bellevue Avenue. This road may be uncomfortable for most bicyclists, but acceptable for experienced bicyclists. And one of the key factors that go into the LTS4, particularly for Egg Harbor Road here, is the fact that this is a 40-mile-an-hour road. And even in this image that you see right here, you'll see a child on a bicycle, but he's clearly on the sidewalk and not using the road. So as shown in this map, there's a variety of stress levels found along the priority corridors. You'll see that some roadways change LTS throughout their roadway, and this could be due to roadway width changes or perhaps changes in the speed limit, which are both factors that determine that LTS level. So the next analysis that we conducted is the sidewalk inventory and assessment. During the field inventory, sidewalk conditions were observed, inventoried, and categorized as good, fair, poor, or missing. Looking at this map, you can see that there's a variety of different conditions existing along Hammonton sidewalks. An objective of this report is to identify gaps in the pedestrian network. And as you can see in this map, there are several segments along the priority corridors of sidewalk gaps. So the final analysis, part of the data collection phase, is looking at crashes. And this includes bicycle and pedestrian crashes and vehicle crashes. As you can see on this map, which just indicates the bicycle and pedestrian crashes over the most recent 5-year period. There's a number of them that occurred on US 30 on the north side of town, and a significant number of them in the town center. And on this next slide here, we just zoom in on the town center here, and you'll see these, what we call as hotspot intersections for these bicycle and pedestrian crashes that occurred. So while this project is focused on pedestrian and bicycle safety, we're also looking at the locations of vehicle crashes that occurred over the most recent 3-year period. This map shows the hotspots for these crashes. You'll see that many occurred in the town center along Bellevue and also along US 30. Wanted to add one thing about Route 54 or Bellevue. This is a state road, and NJDOT is going to be resurfacing this road. And as part of that resurfacing project, it will include repairing of sidewalk, constructing crosswalks and curb ramps at intersections, bus stop improvements, shoulders, and a buffered bike lane from Chew Road to US 30. And so, we're aware of this, and we're coordinating with NJDOT to incorporate these improvements into our plan. Additionally, looking at these crash hotspots, we're going to examine locations to make safety improvement recommendations where crashes were common. With these crash maps, both this map and the previous pedestrian and bicycle crash map, we're showing you the crash locations. But looking ahead, what and where are some of the unsafe conditions that we can address before they become a problem? So when you're providing input, we encourage you to identify locations around Hammonton where you think there are potential crash issues, or perhaps where you've seen some what we would call as near-miss incidents. So now I'm going to transition to the public input process of this project, and I'm going to hand it off to Zeke Mermel, who is also part of the Sam Schwartz team.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the public input process to help inform you how you can be of help. I wish we could all meet in person, but due to the COVID-19 situation, we are finding other ways to engage with the community. We have a project page within the Town of Hammonton's website, which includes a survey and interactive map, which we'd love for you to fill out. The webpage shown here is www.townofhammonton.org/bike-ped-planning, which you can find on the main town website via clicking on the tab circled in red here. Here on the webpage, you can learn how the project is progressing, contextual information, and most importantly, the following tools. On the left side of the screen is the community survey, which is accessible via the project page. This is an example question. It should only take 10 to 15 minutes of your valuable time, and the survey has a series of questions designed to get you thinking critically about the state of walking and biking in town. There are a few targeted questions for people with disabilities, transit users, and school-aged children and teenagers to get input on how to improve mobility for those communities. Over the past few weeks, we've gotten a lot of great feedback and would love it if you could add yours. On the right side of the screen is the interactive or Wiki Map, also accessible via the webpage. We are crowdsourcing all your important input. On the map page online, there is an instruction video and other tools to help you understand how to make your imprint onto the map. You'll be able to add what you like and what you don't like, plus show where in town you'd like walking and biking routes, as represented here as green lines on the map. Since this is a lot to digest, and so that you have enough time to think about all of this, the survey and map will be available for you to provide input on until the end of August. As you're traveling around town and think of new ideas, the survey and map will be available. Afterward, we'll compile all residents' feedback and integrate into our recommendations to be representative of your collective views. Here are two examples of community survey results from your ongoing input. On the left, we see survey responders prioritize the different questions in the survey. Here, we see that people think that there are enough destinations within walking distance, hence that tallest orange bar. And on the right, we see the demand for more bicycle lanes and paths along routes to schools. It's amazing that we already have over 50 responses. On the screen is a snapshot of what we've heard visualized into a word cloud. This recorded presentation and PowerPoint slides will be on the project website once again at www.townofhammonton.org/bike-ped-planning. For additional input beyond the tools I mentioned earlier, please send an email to info@townofhammonton.org. And that information is on the chat box, which you all should see on the Zoom call on the right side of your screen. As the project progresses, there will be other ways you all can provide input. This is the first of a few public information center events. At the next one, we will present survey findings. The virtual format is important since we cannot see you in person during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here is an outline of what to expect next. We're currently on the left, gathering your feedback from the platforms I mentioned a moment ago. As soon as all the information is in, we will develop recommendations based on your input and present them back to you so that you are fully informed of what your fellow residents also want. Lastly, we will finalize recommendations and start developing this bicycle and pedestrian plan, as you can see on the right. So now we will open it up for a question and answer session conducted by my colleague, Steve Wong. We will go over questions you've already sent, as well as new questions you're submitting right now. As a reminder, for those of you in the Zoom meeting, go to the bottom corner of your screen to open the chat window where you can enter your remaining questions. As was announced earlier tonight, for those of you watching from elsewhere, such as on Channel 9, please send your questions to info@townofhammonton.org. And while we give you a little bit more time for you to answer your questions, I'm going to turn things over to Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So, we are at the almost the very beginning of the study. And, the end result is to provide the town with a plan and really a roadmap as guidance to make Hammonton more walkable, more bikeable, and more livable. A place where people want to come to live, work, and play. We've seen over the years, and as Bill mentioned earlier, we've done the LTA program has completed over 80 of these. We're now able to go back and look at how the improvements that were made and the recommendations that were made have helped communities, achieve revitalization and just become places where become destinations as opposed to just places where people live and work. So, I think Hammonton has a lot to offer, from their downtown to, some of the farms and the blueberries. They're great. So, a couple of things I just want to touch on as questions are coming in. I just wanted to reiterate that this study is being funded as a grant through NJDOT, the Office of Safety, Bicycle and Pedestrian Programs. So, there's no cost to the town, and really, the hope is that the improvements that are made and the recommendations that are made through the final report will be able to be used to apply for funding, again, grant funding from the state and the federal government to finance some of the improvements. The intent is for our report to give the town the ammunition, if you will, and provide some of the technical assistance to fill out grant applications and apply for those grants to implement a lot of the recommendations. So again, there's no cost for the study, and the hope is that the study and final report is used to acquire grant funding for all the different programs out there. And there are a number of programs, especially, I know in this day and age, funding is tight, but there is funding earmarked for bicycle and pedestrian improvements for towns. One of the questions we have is, can Broadway also be looked at as a possible priority roadway? Yeah, as we start hearing comments from the community and from the municipality of areas where they think, again, as Andrew said, can potentially be areas for improvement. Again, before the data tells us that there's a problem, to proactively look at those areas, we can certainly consider improvements to different roadways. And that's why your feedback is important to this process. We can look at the data, the historic data, and understand what's been happening. But the type of information we're looking for are areas where there have been near misses, areas where there has the potential to be a problem. The goal here is to be proactive and make improvements to those areas before they become issues. So yeah, we can consider looking at Broadway as well. There's another question. Will you be developing recommendations for a biking infrastructure at some high visibility, privately owned destinations, supermarkets, shopping centers, restaurants, as well as publicly owned destinations? Yeah. So when we look at where people are traveling to and from, it doesn't matter if it's a private destination or if it's a public destination. If people are going there, and there's the need for those infrastructure improvements, either through biking or walking, that's where we want to make the improvements. It's, we really want to target areas in need. And again, this is where it's important for us as a project team to understand where the community wants to go. So I encourage you to go back to the Wiki Map, the crowdsourcing map on the webpage, and even if it's just a destination, you click on it, leave us a note, let us know this is where I'd like to walk to or bike to. The facilities just aren't there, and I feel uncomfortable riding my bike to this location. That's the type of information we're looking for. We set up those priority corridors, based on initial discussions with the town. But again, we really want to know where the community as a whole like to go. Also, so we can go there too. Were there any other questions that you can see? I don't see any others. One of the questions that kind of came up in conversations with other people is, how are we making connections to the downtown? Part of what we've heard so far is, and again, the priority areas are focused on the downtown area, but ideally we'd like to make some connections to the outlying areas, the areas out by the farms and things like that. We understand that a lot of times there are workers who are coming in, and they may not have access to a car to come into town. We want to be able to provide infrastructure so that they can get from the farms and enjoy the downtown community, and access the different transit options that are in Hammonton. So just a little bit about some of the improvements. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, but in terms of looking at other improvements, a lot of times our improvements we are constrained by the widths of the roadway, and what we try to do is look for ways to reallocate some of that space, even if it's providing shared lane markings, so that bicycles do have a little bit of a facility. But also, really, a lot of times it's to alert drivers to say, hey, be alert that and bicycles may be in this area. So there are a lot of different treatments we can recommend to promote bicycle safety in some cases. And with regard to pedestrians, again, sometimes it's as simple as striping a crosswalk and making it more high visibility. So we will be looking at the data that's been provided, that we've researched. We will be looking at the data that the community as a whole that you provide to us. And based on that, we will be focusing in on areas to make those improvements. Are there any other questions from the group?
There is a question in the chat.
Any estimate as to when DOT will start the Route 54 paving project? Good question. Currently, that repaving project is in preliminary engineering. So based on that timeline, it's probably a year or so out, maybe a year and a half. We do know that they have preliminary plans to do sidewalk repairs and curb ramps, and as Andrew mentioned earlier, a buffered bike lane, and then that was going up until 2, which is the limits of the project. So knowing that, from our standpoint, it would make sense to continue that buffered bike lane further south as much as we possibly could. But we have been in touch with that project manager at DOT, and they are still currently in design. So the estimate is probably a year to year and a half. But again, as part of that project, there will be outreach to the community, at least to the local officials, so that they are aware of the project and what phase that it's in. Another comment here is it may be good to look at some of the major subdivisions that are presently located on the outskirts of town, see where there's missing sidewalk, and provide recommendations to make a connection to downtown. Yep. Again, we did our preliminary look. We will, focus in on some of those residential areas. Again, that's the goal of this project, to provide access, non-motorized access to people on the outskirts of town and other areas to come to the downtown and take advantage of the restaurants and shopping that's down there, as well as access transit. Can you describe the buffered bike lane between Shoe Road and Route 30 on Route 54? Sure. A buffered bike lane, so with regard to bicycle facilities, a bike lane, as many of you may know, is a set aside area of the roadway with bike markings where only bicycles should be in, and vehicles should not be in those bike lanes. A buffered bike lane is a bike lane with generally a 2-foot hatched out area that nobody should be in. The reason for that is it provides a little bit more separation between the traveling vehicles and the bike riders. So, if the bike needs to stay closer to the center of the road to avoid a drainage inlet or some debris on the roadway, they can safely move over to the leftmost portion of the bike lane and still have a 2-foot buffer separating them from vehicles. Buffered bike lanes can be as simple as a painted hatched out area, or it can also have delineators like plastic bollards or something like that provides a greater visual separation and also a little bit of a physical separation. I don't know that the design of the buffered bike lane has been completed yet, but we will keep checking in with the project manager and the designer for that project as we advance our project, because ideally we would like to mimic the same treatment that they use as a recommendation for the rest of Route 54. And if we get to that point first where we come up with recommendations for that design, we're going to give that design to them and have them build it into theirs. So the look of that bike facility should remain consistent throughout. Again, if anyone has any questions that is watching on Channel 9, you can send an email to info@townofhammonton.org, and we'll post that into the chat, so we'll be able to answer those questions now. Again, I think it's important to remember that this is just the first time we'll be able to be in touch. Generally, as Zeke mentioned, we do like to conduct these meetings in person where we can, spend some time with the people and really understand what their concerns are. But unfortunately, we are in a era where we need to change the way we do things, and this is one of those ways to be able to have that two-way communication with the community. And again, that's what we hope it is. We hope it's a two-way communication. So even if you don't have any questions now and you want to ask questions or provide comments later on, feel free to go to the project website and leave us a comment there, or send an email again to the info@townofhammonton.org email address, and it'll get to us on the project team. What has been our experience with the use of curbline bump outs, making pedestrian crossings safer, such as along Route 54 in the downtown area? Great question. Bump outs or curb extensions, as they're known sometimes, are at intersections where the curb line is extended into the street, generally 6 to 8 feet into the roadway. So this does a couple of things. One, it provides a shorter pedestrian distance crossing between the two sides, right? Because now we're shrinking the exposure to the pedestrians to vehicle traffic by 16 feet, right? So 8 feet on both sides. But it also allows the pedestrian to be out further into the street while staying safe, right? Because they're still on the sidewalk, and more in a driver's line of sight. Also, because it's sticking out into the roadway, acts as a traffic calming device to slow vehicles down. The experience we've had is very positive. There have been a number of studies done which show a significant reduction in pedestrian crashes and even vehicle crashes when curb extensions or bump outs are used. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but they are considered one of FHWA's proven safety countermeasures. You know, the concern with providing bump outs is that people are concerned that it may impact parking. Well, actually, when you look at them, they increase parking somewhat in that typically there should be no parking 25 feet from the intersection. That area should be remain free and clear as clear space, otherwise also known as daylighting the intersection, where there's nothing there to obstruct driver view of not just pedestrians but also oncoming cars on the perpendicular roadways that they're crossing. But when you have a curb extension, instead of the 25-foot distance, that distance shrinks to 10 feet. So you gain 15 feet or almost a parking spot back by having them, because you can now park up to that curb extension. So, you know, there are a lot of different, you know, people are concerned, you know, parking is always a concern. And it's something that we can also address as part of the study, especially in the downtown areas. You know, in some locations, what we've done, which has been very successful, is provided back in angle parking as opposed to parallel parking. And that allows you to have much more parking. Or, you know, let's say you have parking on both sides of this, parallel parking on both sides of the street. If we can install back in angle parking, which essentially doubles your parking space, then, you know, perhaps we can reclaim the parking from the other side and create bike lanes out of it. So there are a lot of different things we can do. So you would have a net zero loss in parking in that situation, but still provide bicycle facilities and bike lanes along a corridor, even though, you know, you may feel that the roadway is constrained. Those are just some of the options that we can do and look at to complete the street. Another question regarding safe routes to school issues. Will you be conducting sidewalk and street surveys to develop recommended walking and biking routes? Or will something like that be a recommendation for future action? That's another good question. So we are aware of safe routes to school programs, and as part of our steering committee, we have Cross-County Connection. They are your local transportation management association. And what they do is provide, again, free of charge, local technical assistance to municipalities who would like to improve bicycling and walking to schools. So this is right up their alley, and we have them engaged as part of this project's steering committee. And we will be working with them and collaborating with them to launch safe routes to school programs. Again, that does require some participation from the schools, and that's something that we will continue to work on with the town and with the school district to get that program up and off the ground. So in a roundabout way, yes, those safe routes to school programs and analyses working with cross-county connection will allow us to make those recommended improvements. And again, there's funding available for safe routes to school improvements. And by getting that technical assistance for that very specific grant program is very valuable to the town, because it puts them in a good place to be very competitive, because many municipalities and schools are applying for that money, but they really understand the process. They really understand the scoring system that's used to award those projects. So we're going to collaborate with them, and have been, to put together a strong safe routes to school program and evaluation. And again, thinking about applying for grants and money through the state and through the federal government, having a master plan, a bicycle pedestrian master plan, is one of those items that check off the box and get the town an extra point in the scoring, right? The greater number of points you have, the better your chances of receiving that grant funding. So, our intent here is to provide a report where the town can just kind of cut and paste some of the information that we have, because we know the types of things that are required of those grants. So the town can just kind of cut and paste into those grant applications, and should hopefully make it very seamless. Another question here: with the current increase in need for outdoor dining, how have parklets worked out in certain situations or certain streets? Another good question. One of the things we are doing at Sam Schwartz globally or nationally is providing services to generally chambers of commerce or business improvement districts who are looking for ways to create that outdoor seating in this era of social distancing for restaurants as part of revitalization. There are a number of things that we can do. So to just answer the question, really they're working out very well. The other result of the pandemic are fewer cars, and fewer cars means decreased need for parking, on-street parking. So a lot of times we are reallocating those parking spaces temporarily to create parklets, where we're designating or we're coordinating off those parking spaces using things as simple as it could be traffic cones, or those plastic construction barrels, or something a little bit more robust like planters, or in some cases they're building physical platforms to fill in those parking spaces so that they can be repurposed as either a small parklet or additional outdoor dining, to great success. We've worked with, most recently, Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, which they're, for those who are unfamiliar, it's considered the Little Italy of the Bronx. And there are just a number of restaurants in a 3 or 4 block strip. And we've worked with that business improvement district to create outdoor spaces for those restaurants to expand into the street and bring back their patrons who are looking for the great food there. So we can certainly work with the town as part of a revitalization effort to look at opportunities to reclaim some of the parking areas that are currently unused and help some of the businesses downtown. You know, a lot of times it's you know, just very low cost items that can be done to implement those. So again, not that heavy a lift. It just takes a little bit of looking at and working on to provide the correct visual cues that cars are no longer permitted in those areas. You know, we've also worked on concepts like open street concepts and safe streets. And those are concepts where because the traffic is reduced, there are opportunities to close entire streets so that they now become open for pedestrians and bicyclists and just areas where people can recreate and be outdoors in a time where, well, we're supposed to stay indoors and isolated. So, you know, we're providing a greater space for people to do that in downtown and more urban areas. Safe streets are very similar to that, though they do permit local traffic. So again, in say a residential neighborhood, the street is not quite barricaded, but enough so that one car can enter. The speed limit on that street is then reduced to 10 to 15 miles an hour. And the vehicles are required to give right of way to pedestrians and bicyclists as they're out and about using the newly claimed space. All right, are there any other questions? In closing, what I'd like to do is, again, just encourage everyone to provide their comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know where you think improvements need to be made. Let us know the areas we should be focusing on. Let us know where you like to walk, where you like to bike, or if you haven't, you know, if you haven't, or areas where you want to go, but you just feel unsafe. You feel unsafe going there. Those are the types of areas where we want to focus and make some improvements to the town. All right, well, not seeing any other questions. Samantha or Denise, did anything else come in through the web, through the email address or anything like that? I don't see anything in the chat. Did I miss anything?
I did not have any other questions.
All right, well, that's great. Well, on that note, thank you all for attending. We will have this recording as well as the PowerPoint slides posted to the website shortly. And you know, feel free to reach out to us and the project team, and we look forward to look forward to seeing you hopefully in person, but if not, at the next virtual public information center. Thanks everybody that joined us on the Zoom call as well as on Channel 9 and the live stream, and have a good night.